Hello. So in this video, we're going to be talking about Benicio del Toro's movie Hellboy, which is based on the Mike Mignola graphic novel series, which at the time of filming I have not read, but they are on my to-read list for the near future. So the film Hellboy is a really interesting film, and I would actually argue it is an epic tale. Not in the sort of casual way that we tend to now use the word epic, like, yo, that was an epic sheets run, bro, but more like the traditional epic poetry style or epic narratives from the ancient world. Things like Gilgamesh, the Odyssey, Bear Slayer, Beowulf, the Ramayana, things like this. So, and I'll talk more about what that means in just a little bit, particularly drawing on the work of Joseph Campbell. But basically, the story of Hellboy is that in 1944, some Nazis, Nazi occultists, off in an island off the coast of the UK, managed to open a portal to hell, and out comes this little sort of toddler demon, basically. The Nazis are defeated, and the baby demon, which is named Hellboy by the American soldiers who go and defeat the Nazis there. Hellboy comes back to the US and basically becomes a member of the FBI in the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense, where he fights monsters. And he sort of grows up slowly, and then we get to the present, which at the time of the movie was the early 2000s, because I think it was 2004 that the film came out. And when a hellhound demon named Samael is sort of resurrected by Rasputin, who's this sort of like ghostly, otherworldly kind of villain. Hellboy has to fight Samael. He kills Samael several times, and every time Samael is resurrected, he multiplies. So one version of Samael dies, two more are reborn. Eventually, Trevor Brutenholm, known as Broom, is so that's Hellboy's mentor, his father figure. Eventually, Broom is murdered, and that leads Hellboy on a quest to Moscow, to the tomb or the mausoleum of Rasputin, for the final epic showdown, in which Liz Sherman, Hellboy's love interest, is killed, and in order to resurrect her, Rasputin tells him that he needs to open the portal to hell, thereby unleashing a demonic apocalypse upon the world. Hellboy partially opens the portal, but then his sort of FBI minder, John Myers, reminds him of what sort of Broom had tried to instill in him about making choices and doing the right thing. And so Hellboy decides to reclose the portal, at which point he kills Rasputin, who sort of, almost like in Ridley Scott's Alien, a demonic god bursts from Rasputin's chest, becomes really gigantic, and Hellboy has to kill this demon in the final showdown. At which point he then basically brings he basically threatens hell that if they don't return Liz's soul, he will come and take it, and they won't like the consequences of that. And then that's essentially the end of the film. She is resurrected. He is victorious over the forces of demonic apocalypse. And that's basically where we end. So it's a really almost direct example of the epic myth, according to Joseph Campbell in his book Hero with a Thousand Faces. In this book, he theorizes what he calls the Monomyth, which is the idea that virtually every epic myth in human history across cultures has a basic structure. It has certain key elements that exist across cultures, across myths, etc., etc. Nowadays, mythologists, comparative religions people, those who study myths, literature people, those who study myths, take this with a very large grain of salt. We no longer really accept that there is as much uniformity as Campbell argues that there is, though a lot of the things that he points to as generic elements of a hero's journey do tend to hold up across many myths. So there's some degree of truth, but it's not as uniform as Campbell would make it seem. That being said, most of the elements of Campbell's theory of the monomyth, of the mythic, of the hero's journey through myth, we can trace in Hellboy. And I've made notes going through, and so I can sort of remember all of these things. So, according to Campbell, myth starts in the ordinary world. And we get this very, very briefly in the opening section with Trevor Brutenholm, the young Trevor Brutenholm, who's played by Kevin Trainer. This is the first few minutes of the film prior to the portal to hell being opened and Hellboy emerging. So that's the ordinary world. But then the hero is summoned to depart from the ordinary world and is called to adventure. In this case, Hellboy is summoned to depart, ironically enough, from the sort of mythic or supernatural space of hell, because he's brought to the ordinary world that we know. So his departure is a sort of ironic inversion of what normally happens in myth, which is where the epic hero or the mythic hero starts in the ordinary world and is then transported or departs into the supernatural world. In this case, the departure works sort of the opposite way, where the epic hero starts in the supernatural world and departs into the ordinary world, but in that transition, he actually brings elements of the supernatural world with him. So the ordinary world that we know, becomes infused with that sort of supernatural energy. And of course, this is what Hellboy ends up doing, working for the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense, which is a subdivision of the FBI. So this is the ordinary world made strange by the presence of demonic and supernatural entities. We also have the call to adventure, because again, Hellboy's job in the FBI is to fight monsters, basically. Typically, the hero has a mentor figure. Again, this is Broom, who, apart from the opening scene where he's played by Trainer, is played by John Hurt, who's fantastic. Incidentally, Hellboy is played... I'm blanking on his name. I can't think of his name. It'll come to me in just a second, and I'll tell you. But John Hurt, fantastic performance. So he is the mentor. He's the father figure. And interestingly enough, he recruits John Myers, who's played by Rupert Evans, to become a sort of replacement mentor figure. Because what Broom tells Myers is that Myers' responsibility is going to be to help nurture Hellboy to become more fully human. Hellboy is played by Ron Perlman, by the way, who's also fantastic. Ron Perlman and John Hurt are amazing in everything that they're in, and Hellboy is no exception. Perlman is just a fantastic character. He's hilarious, but he also, like, he fits the violence, the machismo, etc., of Hellboy. So fantastic stuff. So we have the mentor, and then the sort of surrogate mentor of John Myers, who's actually there more in the capacity of an ally, which is another element of Campbell's monomyth theory, is that the hero has allies who assist him. And Myers goes above and beyond, and actually a number of times puts himself in danger to try and help Hellboy, even though Hellboy doesn't want him to. We've also got Abe Sapien, who's played by Doug Jones and voiced by David Hyde Pierce, who has one of the greatest voices in Hollywood. So Abe Sapien is, I think the term among cryptozoologists would be an ichthyosapien. He is part fish, part human. He's a fish humanoid who also has psychic abilities. He can read minds, at least to a certain extent. And so he is one of the people in this bureau who has a team hunt and fight monsters. We also have Agent Clay, who's played by Corey Johnson. He is Hellboy's minder prior to Myers coming in, and then Clay gets murdered at some point in the film, about midway through the film. The other person is Liz Sherman, and I'm not 100% sure whether or not she should be put into the category of allies. She is in a way, but for the first roughly 2/3 of the film, she's unwilling to help Hellboy. She's unwilling to come back to the Bureau. She's in a psychiatric hospital because she has what's called psychokinesis, or pyrokinesis, which is the ability to light, in this case, herself on fire without burning. Pyrokinesis can also be the ability to light other things on fire using one's mind, but she sort of lights herself on fire, sort of like the Human Torch or something like this. And she's initially unwilling to be involved with the FBI and with hunting monsters, and it's really only in the last third of the film that she agrees to return and become active again. After Broom gets murdered, she agrees to sort of get back on board. So we've got the mentor, we've got the allies who are assisting Hellboy in the overall epic quest. We have in Campbell the idea of the guarded threshold and the road full of trials, which in this case are interconnected. The guarded threshold is a trial through which the hero passes that puts them on the actual epic journey. So in this case, this would involve the resurrection of Samael by Rasputin and his associates. Samael, played by Brian Steele, with, I think, a lot of CGI. But it's actually, like, I'm not an expert on CGI or filmmaking or anything like this, but it is interesting to me that they have an actual actor playing this character who's this sort of gigantic hellhound with like a weird sort of beak head, 4 eyes, and all this stuff. Like, there's so much CGI, you would almost think, why even bother having an actor? But for Brian Steele's sake, good on them. So we got Samael, and then the other person who figures prominently on the road of trials is Karl Ruprecht Cronin, played by Ladislav Baron. Yep. Cronin is a fascinating figure. Like, he's a weird, creepy dude, but he's a really fascinating figure. We find out that he is masochistically addicted to surgery, and he's had his eyelids removed, he's had his lips removed, he's basically like clockworked himself, and apparently his blood dried up, and now there's just dust, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but you know, it's the world of fantasy. And he's basically this like mechanized Nazi assassin. And he actually kills Broom. So that's one of the trials that sets Hellboy really on the road to the final ordeal, which is another phase of the mythic structure for Campbell. The ordeal being what we would typically in sort of literary analysis call the climax of the conflict. And in this case, Hellboy, Myers, and Liz are captured by Rasputin and his associates. Hellboy is trapped, basically, while Rasputin takes Liz's soul. And in order to get Liz's soul back, according to Rasputin, again, Hellboy has to open the portal to hell. This is the climax. This is the ordeal. Because Hellboy loves Liz and he is willing to do almost anything for her, he initially agrees to open the portal. But again, Myers manages to basically persuade Hellboy not to do this, because he gets a hold of Broom's rosary beads, and he throws them to Hellboy and basically says, remember what your father told you about making choices. So, Liz Sherman, by the way, is played by Selma Blair, and Rasputin is played by Carl Roden. So basically, this is where Hellboy has to make the biggest ethical choice of the film. Does he open the portal to hell to get Liz's soul back and therefore gratify his own individual desires, or does he close the portal to hell and defeat Rasputin, thereby sacrificing his own personal desire to have Liz be alive, but saving the world? He makes that choice. He makes the choice to close the portal. And then, interestingly enough, there are 3 elements toward the end of Campbell's cycle that all get wrapped into basically one event here. Well, okay, so there's the boon that the hero receives for overcoming the ordeal, and then there's usually a death and resurrection. So the boon, death, and resurrection are all interconnected in this film, because we get the death of Liz. So she's the one who dies in this case, and Hellboy's boon, which he gets for overcoming the ordeal, is that she is resurrected, because again, he basically threatens hell that he will come over to the other side and get her soul back if they don't return her. And so she is resurrected. She is brought back to life. And then the last phase of Campbell's mythic structure is the return to the ordinary world in the application of the boon. There's also an element of the trials of the return to the normal world, but in this case, Hellboy doesn't really have that element. But we get the return to, so we get the application of the boon more directly, because the film ends with Hellboy and Liz kissing, finally sort of sharing that moment of romantic connection that he wants from her throughout the film. We also have an element of the return to normal, which is more implied than actually enacted, because it's suggested that Liz is now going to return to the Bureau for Paranormal Research and Defense with Hellboy, and that their new sort of normal lives will be together. So even though this isn't a return to the ordinary in the sense of the sort of pre-Hellboy status quo that we got at the very beginning of the film, this is a return to the ordinary world that Hellboy lives in, with the boon of Liz being alive and being with him. So in this sense, we have almost every stage of Campbell's mythic structure, his monomyth idea, worked out through the film Hellboy. It really is an epic tale. So for as much as some critics have criticized it for being somewhat nonsensical at times, for having sort of inconsistencies and things like this, structurally it's a very, very classic film, a very classic approach to storytelling.